Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens.
Performed by the
Trenton 3rd grade class.
Sponsored by the Southwest Harbor Public Library.
Once upon a time, upon a Christmas Eve, old Scrooge sat busy in his counting house.
A Merry Christmas, Uncle.
It was the voice of Scrooge's nephew.
Bah humbug!
Christmas a humbug, Uncle? You don't mean that, I am sure.
I do out upon a Merry Christmas. If I had my will, every idiot who goes around about with a Merry Christmas on his slip should be boiled with his own pudding. He should.
Uncle!
Nephew, keep Christmas in your own way and let me keep it in mine.
Keep it, but you don't keep it.
Let me leave it alone then. Much good may it do you, much good has it ever done you.
I have always thought of Christmas time as a good time, a kind, forgiving, charitable, pleasant time. And therefore, Uncle, though it was, never put a scrap of gold or silver in my pocket. I believe that it has done me good and will do me good. And I say, God bless it.
Good afternoon.
I'll keep my Christmas humor to the last. So a Merry Christmas, Uncle.
Good afternoon.
And a Happy New Year.
Good afternoon.
Scrooge's nephew left the room without an angry word, but the clerk, letting Scrooge's nephew out, had left 2 other people in.
At this season of the year, Mr. Scrooge, we should give to the poor who suffer at the present time. A few of us are trying to raise a fund to buy the poor some meat and drinks and means of warmth. What shall I put you down for?
Nothing.
You wish to be anonymous?
I wish to be left alone. Since you asked me what I wish for, gentlemen, that is my answer. I don't make people marry myself at Christmas, and I can't afford to make idle people marry. I help to support the prisons and the workhouses. They cost enough, and those who are badly off must go there.
Many can't go there, and many would rather die.
If they would rather die, then they had better do it.
The hour of shutting up the counting house arrived. Scrooge took his melancholy dinner in his usual melancholy tavern and went home to bed. Now, it is a fact that there was nothing at all particular about the knocker on the door of his house, except that it was very large, and yet Scrooge, having his key in the lock of the door, saw in the knocker, but not a knocker, Marley's face. Marley's face with a dismal light about it, like a bad lobster in a dark cellar. As Scrooge looked at this, it was a knocker again. He said,
Pooh-pooh,
and closed the door with a bang. The sound resounded through the house like thunder. Every room above and every cask in the wine merchant's cellars below appeared to have a separate peal of echoes of its own. Scrooge was not a man to be frightened by echoes. He fastened the door and walked across the hall and up the stairs. Up Scrooge went, not caring a button for its being very dark. Darkness is cheap, and Scrooge liked it. Quite satisfied, he closed his door and locked himself in. Double locked himself in, which was not his custom. Thus secured against surprise, he put on his dressing gown and slippers and his nightcap, and sat down before the very low fire to take his gruel. As he threw his head back in the chair, his glance happened upon a bell, a disused bell that hung in the room. It was with great astonishment and with a strange dread that as he looked, he saw this bell begin to swing. Soon it rang out loudly, and so did every bell in the house. This was succeeded by a clanking noise, deep down below, as if some person were dragging a heavy chain over the casks in the wine merchant's cellar. Then he heard the noise much louder on the floors below, then coming up the stairs, then coming straight towards his door. It came on through the heavy door, and a specter passed into the room before his eyes. And upon its coming in, The dying flame leaped up, as though it cried,
I know him, Marley's ghost.
What do you want with me?
Much.
Who are you?
Ask me who I was.
Who were you then?
In my life, I was your partner, Jacob Marley.
The ghost sat down on the opposite side of the fireplace, as if he was quite used to it.
You don't believe me.
I don't.
Why do you doubt your senses?
Because a little thing affects them. You may be an undigested bit of beef, a blot of mustard, a crumb of cheese, a fragment of underdone potatoes. There's more of Grady than of grave about you, whatever you are.
The spirit raised a frightful cry.
Mercy, dreadfuls! Ghosts, why do you trouble me? Why do spirits walk the earth? And why do they come to me?
It is required of every man that the spirit within him should walk among his fellow men and travel far and wide. And if that spirit goes no forth in life, it is commended to do after death. I cannot resist. I cannot stay. I cannot linger anywhere. My spirit never walked beyond our counting house. Mark me. In my life, my spirit never roved beyond our money chaining home, and wearing journey lies before me.
Scrooge was very much dismayed to hear the ghost going on at this rate, and began to shiver.
I am here tonight to warn you that you have yet a chance and hope of escaping my fate. You will be haunted by 3 spirits. Expect the first tomorrow night. When the bell tolls 1, expect the second one the next night at the same hour, the third upon the next night. When the last stroke of 12 has ceased to vibrate, look to see me no more.
Scrooge tried to say humbug, but stopped at the first syllable, and being from the emotion he had undergone, or the fatigue of the day, or the glimpse of the world, or the conversation of the ghost, or the lateness of the hour, he went straight to bed without undressing and fell asleep on the instant.
Deck the halls with boughs of holly, fa la 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 la. 'Tis the season to be jolly, fa la 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 la. Don we now our gay apparel, fa la 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 la. Troll the ancient Yuletide carol, fa la 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 la.
When Scrooge awoke, the church clock told a deep, dull, hollow, melancholy 1. Light flashed up in the room upon the instant, and the curtain of his bed were drawn aside by a strange figure like a child.
Are you the spirit, sir, whose coming was foretold to me?
I am.
Who and what are you?
I am the ghost of Christmas past.
As the words were spoken, they passed through the hall and stood in the busy thoroughfare of a city. It was made plain enough by the dressing of the shops that here, too, it was Christmas time. The ghost stopped at a certain warehouse door and asked Scrooge if he knew it.
No, I apprenticed here.
They went in, a sight of an old gentleman wearing a Welsh wig, sitting behind such a high desk that if he'd been 2 inches taller, he must have knocked his head against the ceiling. Scrooge cried in great excitement.
Why, it's old Fezziwig. Bless his heart, it's Fezziwig alive again.
Yo-ho there, Ebenezer!
A living and moving picture of Scrooge's former self. A young man came briskly in with his fellow apprentice.
Yo-ho, my boys, said Fezziwig. No more work tonight. Christmas Eve. Christmas, Ebenezer. Let's have the shutters up before a man can say Jack Robinson. Clear away, my lads, and let's have lots of room here.
Clear away! There's nothing they wouldn't have cleared away or couldn't have cleared away. With old Fezziwig looking on, he was done in a minute. The warehouse was as snug, as warm and dry, and bright as a ballroom as you would desire to see upon a winter's night. In came a fiddler with a music book, and went up to the lofty desk, and made an orchestra out of it, and tuned like 50 stomach aches. In came Mrs. Fezziwig, one big smile. In came 3 Mrs. Fezziwigs, beaming and lovable. In they all came, one after another, some shyly, some boldly, some gracefully, some awkwardly, some pushing, some pulling. In they all came, anyhow and everyhow. Away they all went, couple at once, hands half, round and back again, the other way, down the middle, up again, round and round, old top couple ways, turning up in the wrong place. When the clock struck 11, the ball broke up. Mr. and Mrs. Fezziwig shaking hands with every person as he or she went out, wishing him or her a Merry Christmas.
A small matter, said the ghost, to make these silly folks so full of gratitude. He has spent but a few pounds of your money, 3 or 4 perhaps. Is that so much that he deserves this praise?
It isn't that, Spirit. He has the power to render us happy or unhappy, to make us service a pleasure or a toil. Say that his power lies in words and looks, in things impossible to add, and count them up. What then? The happiness he gives is quite as great as if it cost a fortune. Spirit, remove me from this place. Haunt me no longer.
As he struggled with the spirit, he was conscious of being exhausted and overcome by an irresistible drowsiness, and farther of being in his own bedroom. He had barely time to reel to bed before he sank into a heavy sleep.
Scrooge awoke in his bedroom. The walls and ceiling were so hung with living green that it looked a perfect grove. The leaves of holly, mistletoe, and ivy reflected back the light, and such a mighty blaze went roaring up the chimney. Heaped upon the floor to form a kind of throne were turkeys, geese, great joints of meat, pigs, long wreaths of sausages, mince pies, plum puddings, barrels of oysters, red-hot chestnuts, cherry-cheeked apples, juicy oranges, luscious pears, great bowls of punch, and immense 12th cakes. Upon this couch there sat a giant glorious to see, who bore a glowing torch.
Come in, and know me better, man. I'm the ghost of Christmas present. Look upon me. You have never seen the like of me before. Touch my robe.
Scrooge did as he was told, and held it fast. The room vanished instantly, and they stood in the city streets upon a snowy Christmas morning. Scrooge and the ghost passed on, invisible, straight to Scrooge's clerks, and at the door the spirit smiled, and stopped to bless Bob Cratchit's house with the sprinklings of the torch. Then up rose Miss Cratchit.
What has ever got your precious father, then? And your brother, Tiny Tim?
No, there's father coming,
cried the 2 young Cratchits, who were everywhere at once. In came Bob, the father, his threadbare clothes darned up and brushed to look seasonable, and Tiny Tim upon his shoulder. At last, for Tiny Tim, he bore a little crutch, and his limbs are supported by an iron frame.
And how did little Tim behave?
As good as gold and better. Somehow he gets thoughtful, sing by himself. So much, and thinks the strangest things you ever heard. He told me coming home that he hoped the people saw him in the church because he was a cripple, and it might be pleasant to them to remember upon Christmas Day.
Who made lame bears walk the blind men see?
Master Peter and the 2 young Cratchits went to fetch the goose, with which they soon returned in high procession. Mrs. Cratchit made the gravy, ready beforehand in a little saucepan, hissing hot. Master Peter mashed the potatoes with incredible vigor. Miss Belinda sweetened up the applesauce. Martha dusted the hot plates. Bob took Tiny Tim beside him in a tiny corner at the table. The 2 young Cratchits set chairs for everybody, not forgetting themselves, and crammed spoons into their mouths, lest they should shriek for goose before their turn came to be helped. At last the dishes were set on, and grace was said. It was succeeded by a breathless pause, as Mrs. Cratchit, looking slowly all along the carving knife, prepared to plunge it in the breast. But when she did, and when the long-expected gush of stuffing issued forth, one murmur of delight arose all around the board, and even Tiny Tim, excited by the 2 young Cratchits, beat on the table with the handle of his knife, and feebly cried,
Hooray!
But now, the plate being changed by Miss Belinda, Mrs. Cratchit left the room alone to take the pudding and bring it in. Miss Cratchit entered, smiling proudly with the pudding like a speckled cannonball so hard and firm, blazing half of a quartern of ignited brandy and bright with Christmas holly stuck on top.
Oh, a wonderful pudding!
At last the dinner was all done. The cloth was cleared, the hearth swept, and the fire made up. Then all the Cratchit family drew round the hearth, while the chestnuts on the fire sputtered and crackled noisily. They were happy, grateful, pleased with one another, and contented with the time. And when they faded and looked happier yet in the bright sprinklings of the spirit's torch at parting, Scrooge had his eye upon them, and especially on Tiny Tim, until the last. But the whole scene passed off, and he and the spirit were again upon their travels. Much they saw, and far they went, and many homes they visited, but always with a happy end. Suddenly, as they stood together in an open place, the bell struck 12. Scrooge looked about him for the ghost, and saw it no more. As the last stroke ceased to vibrate, he remembered the prediction of old Jacob Marley, and, lifting up his eyes, beheld a solemn phantom, draped and hooded, coming like a mist along the ground towards him.
Ghost of the future, I fear you more than any specter I've seen. Will you not speak to me?
It gave him no reply. The hand pointed straight before them.
Lead on, lead on. The night is waning fast, and it is precious time to me. I know. Lead on, spirit.
They scarcely seemed to enter the city, for the city rather seemed to string up about them. But there they were in the heart of amongst the merchants. The spirit stopped beside a little knot of businessmen. Observing that the hand was pointed to the Scrooge, advanced to listen to their talk.
I don't know much about it either way. I only know he's dead.
When did he die?
Last night, I believe.
What has he done with his money?
I haven't heard. Company, perhaps. He hasn't left it to me. That's all I know.
The scene had changed, and now he almost touched a bare bed. A pale light rising in the outer air fell straight upon this bed, and on it, unwatched, unwept, uncared for, was the body of the unknown man.
Spirit, let me see some tenderness connected with this death or this dark chamber. Spirit will be forever present to me.
The ghost brought him to poor Bob Cratchit's house, the dwelling he had visited before, and found the mother and the children seated round the fire. Quiet, very quiet. The noisy little Cratchits were as still as statues in one corner, and sat looking up at Peter, who had a book before him. The mother and her daughters were doing needlework. but surely they were very quiet. The mother laid her work upon the table and put her hand up to her face.
The color hurts my eyes. They're better now again. It makes them weak by candlelight, and I wouldn't show weak eyes to your father when he comes home for the world. It must be near his time.
Past it, rather. But I think he was walking a little slower than he used to these few last evenings, Mother.
And I have known him walk with Tiny Tim upon his shoulder very fast indeed. But he was very light to carry, and his father loved him, so if that was no trouble, no trouble. And there's your father at the door.
She hurried out to meet him, and Bob came in. His tea was ready for him, and they all tried to see who should help him. Then the two young Cratchits got upon his knees and laid each child a little cheek against his face, as if they said, "Don't mind it, Father. Don't be grieved." Bob was very cheerful with them and spoke pleasantly to all the family. He looked at the work on the table and praised Mrs. Cratchit and the girls.
You went today then, Robert? Yes, my dear. I wish you could have gone. It would have done you good to see how great a place it is. But you'll see it often. I promised him that I would walk there on a Sunday. My little child.
Spectre, something informs me that our parting moment is at hand. I know it, but I know not how. Tell me what man that was with the covered face, whom we saw lying dead.
The ghost of Christmas yet to come conveyed him to a dismal, wretched, ruinous churchyard. The spirit stood among the graves and pointed down to one. Scrooge crept towards it, trembling as he went, and following the figure read upon the stone of the neglected grave his own name, Ebenezer Scrooge.
I am that man who lay upon the bed. No, Spirit. Oh, no, no. Spirit, hear me. I am not the man I was. I will not be the man I must have been. Why show me this? If I am past, I'll hope. Assure me that I yet may change these shadows you have shown me by an altered life. I will honor Christmas in my heart and try to keep it all the year. Oh, tell me I may sponge away the writing on this stone.
Holding up his hands in one last prayer to have his fate reversed, he saw an alternation in the phantom's hood and dressed. It shrunk, collapsed, and dwindled down into his bedpost. Yes, the bedpost was his own. The bed was his own. The room was his own. The best, happiest of all, the time before him was his own. To make amends in, he was checked by Churchies ringing out the lustiest peals he had ever heard. Running to the window, he opened it and put out his head. No fog, no mist, no night, clear, bright, stirring golden day.
What's today?
Cried Scrooge, calling downward to a boy in Sunday clothes.
What's today, my fine fellow?
Today? Why, Christmas Day.
It's Christmas Day. I haven't missed it. Hello, my fine fellow.
Hello.
Do you know the Poulters in the next street by one at the corner?
I should hope I did.
An intelligent boy, a remarkable boy. Do you know whether they've sold the prize turkey that was hanging up there? Not a little prize turkey, the big one.
What, the one as big as me?
What a delightful boy. It's a pleasure to talk to him. Yes, my buck.
It's hanging there now.
Is it? Go and buy it.
Walk,
No, I'm in earnest. Go and buy it. And tell them to bring it here, that I may give it them the direction where to take it. come back with it, the man, and I'll give you a shilling. Come back with it in the last 5 minutes, and I'll give you half a crown.
The boy was off like a shot.
I'll send it to Bob Cratchit. He shan't know who sends it. It's twice the size of Tiny Tim.
Scrooge dressed himself all in his best, and at last got out to the streets. The people were by this time pouring forth. He had seen them with the ghost of Christmas present, and walking with his hands behind him, Scrooge gave everyone a big smile. He looked so happy. In a word, that 3 or 4 fellows said,
Good morning, sir.
Merry Christmas,
A Merry
sir.
Christmas
Good morning,
to you.
sir, and a Merry Christmas to you.
He was early at the office next morning. If he could only be there first and catch Bob Cratchit coming late. The clock struck 9, no Bob. A quarter past, no Bob. Bob was full 18 minutes and a half behind his time. Bob's hat was off before he opened the door. He was on his stool in a jiffy, driving away with his pen as if he were trying to overtake 9 o'clock.
Hello, what do you mean by coming here at this time of day?
I am very sorry, sir. I'm behind my time.
You are. Yes, I think you are. Step this way, if you please. Now I tell you what, my friend, I am not going to stand for this sort of thing any longer, and therefore I'm about to raise your salary.
Bob trembled.
A Merry Christmas, Bob, said Scrooge as he clapped him on the back. A Merry Christmas, Bob, my good fellow, than I have given you for many a year. I'll raise your salary and endeavor assist your struggling family.
Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all, and more, and to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he was a second father. He became as good as a friend, as good as a master, and as good as a man of good old city, New or any other good old city, town, in the good old world. Some people laughed to see him change in him, but his own heart laughed, and that was quite enough for him. And it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well. May that be truly said of us and all of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed,
God bless us, everyone.
We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Good tidings